Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Mark Goes Rogue podcast. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic. Recently, I was a guest of Russ Bertetta, a longtime and now retired Serra High School teacher. Russ hosted a Serra High School Traditions Luncheon, where about 20-plus retired teachers, spanning from 1960 to 2017, gathered to have lunch and share some memories. Russ invited me to have lunch and to record some of those memories on my podcast. Please enjoy the show. Good afternoon, and I'm sitting with who?
Tom Monahan.
Tom Monahan. And you were a teacher at Serra?
From 1983 through 2020.
So that's like
37 years?
They're 37 years. I was going to say 27. Thank you for the correction in math, Tom. So what subjects or subjects did you teach at Serra?
You know, I came in as a history major, but the principal at the time, Mike Peterson, said, well, if you want a job, you have to teach religious studies or theology. So I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. 37 years later, I was still doing the same.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So you never did any history?
You know, I did for a couple of years,
Yeah.
but it was always kind of like fill-in.
Yeah.
But I really got to enjoy I taught a morals and ethics class to sophomores, which is always kind of interesting.
Terrific.
And it morphed over the 37 years to be, I think, kind of interesting.
Monahan. Was there another Monahan at Serra? Are you guys related? There was Bill Monahan,
There
right?
was Jim Monahan was the teacher.
Okay.
We always said, well, he was the pretender because I'm Monahan with a GH.
Okay.
And he didn't have the G.
No relation.
No relation.
All right.
But we grew very close.
Besides teaching theology, religion, etc., what else did you do at Serra? Did you coach any sports or anything?
Well, I was the driver's ed teacher.
Oh, I didn't have any driver's ed when I was here. That's crazy. Good.
So there's a lot of chaos on the roads because of me.
Yeah.
But I coached freshman baseball for probably 28 of those years. And then when Pete Jensen left, I did the varsity for 2 years until he came back.
Good for you.
On an interim basis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I enjoyed all those years. It was fun.
When you were the freshman baseball coach, that was 28 years. Who preceded you? Do you remember?
Yeah, Jerry Agrella, I believe, was before me.
I had Father Pritchard was our
Yeah, he was
freshman.
before that.
Yeah. You remember the name?
I do.
Terrific. When you were there, 28 years, you just didn't see one principal. You probably saw a few principals, right? Do you remember who some of them were?
Well, Mike Peterson hired me.
Yep. But was Mike president or principal then?
No, he was the principal at the time.
Okay.
And then, so he was there for probably 30 of those years.
Okay, so you didn't really have a change in principal then?
We had then Lars Lund and
yeah.
Barry Thornton. So I went through.
You did go through 3.
And the new one, 4 total.
No kidding. Yeah. Wow. We won't ask for any comparisons because that's not important. Okay. What are some fond memories that you have of Serra while you were there teaching and coaching?
You know, coaching, we always drew great kids that were fun to teach and fun to coach.
Yeah.
It was good being a teacher coach. I really enjoyed that. You know, the one thing I miss being retired is the camaraderie with my peers. We're meeting today, and it's just a great thing to get together with those people.
Have you been to one of these tradition lunches in the past?
I think I've been to them all since I've been retired for 4 years.
Good for you. Yeah.
You know, it's just a bond with those people. And the kids, you know, I miss the classroom interaction. It's always fun.
Yeah.
I always kind of like to used to mess with kids.
And how long have you been retired now?
4 years.
And what have you been doing in retirement?
Chasing 3 grandkids, under 5.
They all live close by?
They do.
Terrific.
Volunteer a couple of days a week at a senior food center.
Yeah.
We've obviously done some traveling and things of that nature.
Good for you.
When I was teaching, I never could really read a lot.
Now you have the time.
I do.
Yeah.
So I really
and you're
enjoy
preparing
that.
for class.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to tell me a few notable students that you might have had over the years, but I prefer if we don't do any athletic ones because we all know about the great Serra sports people that we've had there. So,
yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm going to take it from the worker class group.
Okay.
I was talking to Russ earlier, and I estimate that there's probably 45 to 50 police and fire that I've had in my classroom. All great kids, you know, that went into that service. I totaled up the number of teachers at Serra right now and administrators and support staff that I taught. And there's 17 to 18 of those that are currently at Serra High School.
Terrific.
So I take real pride in the fact that, you know, those kids were the foundation of Serra High School.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and then Joe Bradley, a priest who's a graduate of Serra High School.
Yep.
great person. We have business people. But I kind of took it from the general standpoint of the people that make society work are what come from Serra High School.
And what year again did you start there? I'm going to give you a couple of names. That's why.
82, 83.
82, 83. So probably Michael Colopy. Was he still around?
I taught freshman and sophomore at the time. He might have been a senior.
Okay.
But I know the name, obviously.
Yeah, he's gone on to be a big-time photographer, one of the
right.
great portrait photographers in the U.S. Robert Degoni, he's written a lot of books.
I'm reading one of his books right now.
Terrific.
I can't recall the title.
Was he there when you were there then?
Just before me, I believe.
Okay, great. And what about Greg Gutfeld? You laugh. Greg was he's a comedian now, or he has a show. He's on Fox, I guess. Right.
No, I had Greg as a sophomore.
Really?
And I kind of flip back and forth between CNN and Fox
I get it.
And I kind of laugh at Greg.
Yeah.
No, he's a Cal Berkeley grad.
I know that. I was blown away on all that stuff. And
but a nice kid.
Well, Fox is entertainment. Okay, that's how I look at it. So, okay, a couple of more questions for you, Tom. What were some of the challenges of teaching at an all-boys Catholic high school?
I don't know that there's any challenges. For me, it was interacting with the kids. I could relate to them. Hopefully they could relate to me.
Yeah.
Not having the female influence is different, but I had experienced that in summer schools and in other teaching situations. They're very open, especially with my class where it was discussion of pros and cons of serious issues.
Yep.
I think being same sex, they were willing to really open up and speak their minds, where I think in a co-ed class, they might have been a little less hesitant.
Okay.
Or a little more hesitant, sorry.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because would you like to see Serra become co-ed?
I think it has a niche that should stay as is.
Great.
As long as, we were just talking about, I think there's 870 students right now at Serra.
Yeah.
As long as the numbers stay where they're at, I think it's a resource that should continue.
Don't fix something if it's not broken.
Exactly. There were years when our numbers were down where it was kind of serious consideration, and I know Reardon's done that, but I think for Serra, it's a good niche.
I do too, personally. Yeah, it's just something about it.
Sure.
I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. Oh, you get that look, right? Lastly, what advice do you have for a new teacher coming aboard or wanting to get into the profession?
Be yourself. Be real with the kids. Tell them like it is. They know when they're being conned. They know when they're being played. So you just have to kind of, speak your mind and let them know that they can speak theirs as well.
Great advice.
Within reason.
Tom, thank you.
Thank you.
Name?
Hi, my name is Randy Vogel.
Randy, how many years did you teach at Serra?
I started in 1970 and ended up retiring in 2020, so I just hit 50 years.
50 years in the teaching profession. Amazing. All at Serra.
The only job really that I've ever had. I taught algebra, taught math, served as the department chairman for the math department for a while, but really everything took hold in about 4 or 5 years after I was there. They asked me to become admissions director. So for 40 some odd years, I was the admissions director and would go out and present the program to the grammar schools and talk about coming to Serra and coordinating entrance for the students.
When you were the admissions director, did you have a team that went out as well, or were you just going to every school on the peninsula, or how'd that work?
Well, over the years, we had several people that went out and made the school visits, but we would hit all the Catholic schools in the county and a few public schools and have programs where the kids could come spend a day at Serra. We called it the Shadow Program.
Yeah.
They'd come and go to classes with another student, another freshman.
Right. And Serra still has entrance exams, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Things are pretty much the same. The dates have changed a little bit, but they still have an application process, and they give an entrance exam, and then the kids apply to various schools.
Yeah. You were pretty busy then.
Yeah, from...
As admissions director, I guess that took up a lot of time. Yeah.
Day one until probably when the letters went out in March, it was pretty much nonstop.
Yeah. Okay. Who was the principal, or did you have more than one principal? You had to have more than one principal in 50 years.
I had 6 principals, I think I worked under, starting with Lou Andre and finishing with Charlie McGraw.
And was Mike was Mike Peterson?
Mike Peterson was the principal for the longest time that I was there.
Yeah.
And we worked very closely together.
Yeah.
Had a great relationship. And Mike is Mr. Serra. He just is a remarkable man.
Yeah. Okay, good. Give me a couple of fond memories of Serra.
Well, I think the one thing is the sense of family and community. That's what kept me there. I got a job in 1970. I was 21 years old.
Coming out of college?
And I came right out of Santa Clara and thought I would try teaching for a while. And I'll do this for a couple of years, a few years. And before you know it,
50
10,
years.
20,
Yeah.
50 years have passed. And it's just the spirit and the genuine love for the community that the students have, the faculty has, and the parents.
Coming out of Santa Clara, then you went to one of the, did you go to a Peninsula Catholic elementary school, or were you from the city?
I've lived all my life in San Carlos, and I went to public schools in San Carlos and San Carlos High. A lot of people thought that I went to Serra just because I was there so long.
You would think so, right.
Went to San Carlos High School, class of 66.
Yeah, okay. Next question is notable students that you remember or had during your time at Serra, and I don't want any athletes. We all know the athletes.
You mean I can't tell you I was Tom Brady's algebra teacher?
No, and I think that's great. I think it's terrific. I know that Russ Bertetta taught him history or something like that, but they're great kids. But I want to just talk about the kids that did things other than sports.
We've had so many people that went into service areas, whether it's teaching or medical, firemen, policemen. We've had some great authors. Bob Dagoni was one of my former students, and I've read his books.
He's done very well.
John Lesqua has got some books. I just finished his most recent book.
He was in my class, 66.
We've had people that have gone into the area of politics.
Did you ever have Greg Gutfeld?
I did work with Greg Gutfeld as a freshman, and he was quite a character then. He was very active on the Friar newspaper staff.
Yeah.
And
I guess that was his path.
Well, it's interesting to watch him now and remember him when he was a young kid.
Yeah. What were some of the challenges of teaching at an all-boys Catholic high school?
Well, the first couple of years, I was young, 4, 5, 6 years older than some of the students. And so you worry a little bit, can you maintain discipline in the classroom? And it turned out that that became pretty easy as long as you were upfront with the kids and open and honest.
Yep.
They were mostly, for the most part, willing to learn. And I was there pre-computers, pre-cell phones. I remember my first year of teaching, I would get the quarterly grades added up on a hand crank adding machine. And how
Is that
things have
something,
changed.
hand crank adding machine?
Yeah, it came out with a little tape.
Yeah, I don't even know if those are around anymore, right?
I think it's somewhere in the closet with my rotary phone.
Yeah. Would you ever like to see Serra go co-ed?
I don't know. There's good and bad to that. I know that it would probably hurt the two sister schools, Mercy and Notre Dame. Reardon has done it successfully, so I have mixed feelings on that.
Yeah. Okay. And lastly, any advice for a new teacher coming on board?
Just trust your instincts and trust the kids. And if you're open and honest with them, I think that they will realize that you care about them and give you their best efforts.
Okay. Randy, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Nice to talk to you.
My pleasure. Hi, and what's your name?
Nick Carboni.
Nick Carboni. Nick, when were you at Serra?
I went to school there and graduated in '59, and then I went back to teach. I started in 1965, and I left in 2005.
Wait, you started teaching when at Serra? What year was that?
1965.
And you left when?
2005.
That's 40 years, right?
Yeah,
Is that
right.
40?
That's
Wow.
right.
Was the whole time teaching?
Only the first 10 years were teaching.
Uh-huh.
And then I became assistant principal in charge of academics, and did that for the next 25 or so years. And then the last 5 years I was part-time, and I really spent time breaking new people into the job I had.
Oh, I bet.
Type of thing.
Yeah,
So,
it's got to be a succession, right?
yeah, so.
What principals did you work with when you were at Serra?
Oh, I was hired by Monsignor Maher, and then Father O'Donnell was next. Father Andre was after him. Father Shipper after him. Then Mike Peterson.
Yeah.
And then John Grossi. And I think that's it.
Wow, you had quite a few then.
Yeah. Barry Thornton was one of the people I helped train for my job as assistant principal.
Yeah.
And he eventually was the principal after John. No. Lars Lund came.
Good recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, good recall. All right. Who were some notable students while you were there? And no athletes,
No
okay?
athletes.
Yeah.
Well, there's really too many
Yeah.
to think about. I think about the ones that came back and taught there. We got quite a few that have taught there. One that comes to mind that was a good student in my history class, but also became a priest and came back to be the chaplain for the football team.
Who was that?
Father Joe Bradley.
Oh, yeah, I've heard his name many times.
Great man.
Yeah.
Great man. And a great book about his life.
What were some of the challenges you had at teaching at Serra, but also being an administrator at Serra? Parent conflicts, anything like that?
Not too much. I mean, basically, Serra's a contract school. Here's our contract. We'll do this for your child. Here are the rules. Your child has to do these.
Right.
And if you break the contract, so not many kids broke the contract because, the parents wanted them there. So, plus there was a real camaraderie there. Yeah, everybody stuck together, supported each other. Football players went to basketball games. Basketball players went to football and baseball. So everybody kind of supported everybody.
All right. Last question, because I know you got to ride back up north, right, in a while. What advice would you have for a new teacher coming into the profession?
Be prepared, the first thing, and then keep your kids interested. In your class, in sports, in whatever they're interested in. Support them.
Yeah.
And keep them busy and out of trouble.
Yeah. And you had the distinction of playing football with your two other brothers at the College of San Mateo and winning a championship, huh?
Correct.
That is crazy, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was one of the highlights of my life.
That would have been Mike Carboni and Pete Carboni.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
terrific.
So,
Nick, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Good afternoon, and what's your name?
My name is Peggy Farrell.
Peggy Farrell. You're a teacher at Serra, or you were?
I was a teacher at Serra for 20 years.
Wait a minute. When I was at Serra, there was no women.
No.
Nothing. I don't even think they were in the office. How did you break through?
Good question. I had just gotten back from teaching in South America, and I had started an art department at an American school in Colombia. And so that was on my resume, and they needed an art teacher. And so I applied, and I got the job.
That is terrific. When you got there, were there other lady teachers happening?
We luckily went in with I went in with 3 other women that were all about my age. I was the oldest of that group, but I was young. And so having those other 3 was very helpful.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So you kind of bonded together or
yeah,
what?
we just like hung out and just, if we needed each other, we kind of had each other's back.
So you mentioned you taught art.
I did.
Was there any other subjects you taught, or were you involved in any other extracurricular activities?
Initially, I think I taught maybe 1 or 2 of history because we were just starting this art department. We didn't know if kids would want to take art.
Right.
And so right away it went from like 3 to 5. I mean, I only think I did history for 1 or 2 years. And then I almost did 6 because I had an art class, then I had an advanced art class. And then they built me a beautiful ceramics room. And so then I got to teach ceramics.
Terrific.
Yeah, they built the whole art wing. I mean, I know it sounds arrogant, but it really, they asked me for help and I told them what I needed and they built the beautiful rooms.
That's some great fundraising out there.
Yeah, amazing.
When you were there for 20 years, did you just have one principal or did you have a few?
Oh my God, quite a few.
Name them.
Ugh, I don't know. I can't do it all.
Throw a few at me. Go ahead.
Well, Mike is here.
Yes, Mike Peterson.
And Mike Peterson and Mr. Thornton. And then he was also, who else was there? Father Joe was the president for a while. And then they kind of shuffled through there. I think Lars might have been a principal at some point.
Lars who?
Well, Lars Lund.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. When you were there, a lot of great students have come and
lot
gone
of great
through,
ones.
through
Yeah.
Serra.
Yeah.
Who were some of the notable ones that you remember?
I mean, what's interesting about teaching art at a boys' school is that we, I definitely had all the stars in athletics, but I had a lot of stars that were artists. So
And that's what I want to hear.
Yeah. So I had a kid, Mike Bolin, who became, I believe, an industrial artist. I had someone, Ariel San Jose, actually was on Jeopardy, and he mentioned me, which was very sweet.
That's cool.
Yep. I just had dinner with Naeem Salame, who
Wow.
is he's actually a lawyer.
Yeah.
But he remembers me, and we talk about art. He's going to Italy, so he called me to make sure he knew exactly what to see when he was there.
great.
Yeah. So super cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're a lady,
Yes.
what were some of the challenges of teaching at an all-boys Catholic high school?
Well, the first year was pretty crazy because I was in a room that wasn't a classroom. So it was like, it used to be, I think it was like a 4-H room. It had been a million different things. And so they had to move all these bottles out, and they had to put in, they basically had to make it into a classroom, but it was not a classroom. So it was pretty bad. So that was a challenge of just not being in a space that had natural light, or, just, kind of your regular things that you'd like. They
Yeah.
did get me really good sinks, and I built my own cabinets because I didn't think I could ask anybody to help me. And now I think, I should have had those guys help me.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool you did it.
I did it. Yeah, I did. I got the room ready, and so that was awesome. I mean, we were just laughing. Like 95% of the Serra kids were absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, and
polite, kind, you wouldn't believe. But there were 5% that were pretty hard on us women. So,
I bet.
Yeah.
That transition had to be tough.
Yeah, and I feel like, unfortunately, when you're in that position, it's also like, they weren't mad at me, or they were, I'm sure, mad at me, but it was more like I must have reminded them of a mom or an aunt or someone that they didn't like, because I often got like a little bit of this pushback that was like, did I do anything? And I knew I didn't. So, yeah.
Any advice to a young person wanting to become a teacher?
It's the best, very best, I think, job you can do. I've been a teacher for 25 years. I'm now a therapist. It's been a very smooth transition, but I have so much pride about all the kids that call me and want to have dinner with me and lunch with me. And I feel like I've made a difference in the world. And I honestly would say that every year, we always say you'd be lucky if there's one kid that, thrives or whatever. But I feel like every year I think there were 20 kids that thrived and knew I loved them and knew I cared about them and made a difference to them. And they then made a difference for me.
Great.
Yeah.
Peggy Farrell, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So nice to be with you, Mark.
Thank you, dear. Appreciate it. Hi, what's your name?
Linda Clark.
Linda. What years did you teach at Serra?
Mark, I didn't teach at Serra.
You didn't teach at Serra?
No.
What did you do there?
I was the registrar, and I worked for the assistant principal of academics.
It sounds important to me. What's a registrar?
The registrar, we kept all the records from previous students that went to Serra High School. So if they came back and needed a transcript, I could provide that for them. And then we also did all the report cards for the current students. And Mr. Carboni, who was the assistant principal, did the scheduling for all those students.
All right, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
As a former student, a Serra alum, how far could you go back with these records?
All the way to the beginning of time.
Can we take a little trip to Serra later on, get the records out, and can we just destroy them? Nobody needs to see how I performed at Serra.
I'm no longer
Okay?
there, so you can do whatever you want.
Okay. Give me a couple of principal or two that you had during. And wait a minute. When were you there? When were you an administrator?
I wasn't an administrator.
Yeah, thank you.
I started in 1985, and I left in the year 2000.
So 15 years.
Yes.
And so one or two principals that you had?
Actually, just one, Michael Peterson.
Yeah, okay, great. Do you have some fond memories of Serra?
I have a ton of fond memories.
Okay, give me
at
a
Serra.
couple.
Well, it was a great group of people within the administrative office.
Were there other ladies in the office with you at the time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our receptionist, Grace Grossman, the assistant principal of discipline. The secretary there was Linda Kovacic. The bookkeeper was a female, and Mr. Peterson's secretary, Diane Massetti, was in the office.
Yeah. And while you were there, you said 1985 is your first year.
Correct.
Had ladies started teaching there yet? Were there females in the...
Yes, there were.
But it was just the beginnings, I guess.
But just the beginning, yeah.
Okay. Just for the heck of it, I know you were in the office and doing the registrar, et cetera.
Yes.
Do you remember any notable students can come to your mind? Anybody that...
Well, I know it wasn't during my time, but of course Barry Bonds was there.
I don't want athletes. We all know that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
no athletes.
I'll tell you, we had some students that were just fabulous. The young men that came through there, and always very respectful. They had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made our job so fun, is that we could interact with the boys. We almost felt like we had more sons than we really did.
I bet. Yeah. All right. One last question, if you don't mind.
No,
Would you like to see Sarah go co-ed?
I don't think so. And that's just a personal opinion, because I had 2 boys that went through Sarah, and I think it was a great experience
You
for
had
them.
2 boys that went through Sarah?
Yes.
What years?
One graduated in 92 and one graduated in 94.
Great. So you were there while they were there.
Absolutely.
You knew where your boys were during the day.
Absolutely. And they knew where I was when they needed money.
Absolutely. Linda, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And sir, what is your name?
Mike McGinley.
Mike McGinley. Let me see. I think I used to know you as Mr. McGinley.
That was a long time ago.
It sure was, Mike. It was. I was a senior at 66, and you were. I believe. I want to say you were my English teacher. You may have been history, but I think it was English.
I think it was English.
Yeah. Standout moment. If I'm going to say it, we're going to go live with it. Dominic Cressy did something, and you bolted down the aisle, man. You turned that desk upside down. I was like, whoa, check this guy out. Yeah. That's back when discipline could happen.
That's true.
Yeah. Do you remember those days?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What years did you teach at Sarah?
From the fall of 1960 to the spring of 1999.
That's almost 40 years.
Yes.
What a career.
Then I was asked back just briefly to substitute for a teacher that had to be away for 3 weeks, and I picked up 3 of his classes in English, and I realized then that I made a good decision to retire when I did.
Really? Because things had changed, I guess?
Yeah, but I just didn't have the stamina in the classroom anymore.
Right, right. Okay. What subjects did you teach? I know I mentioned history and English. Was there anything else that you taught?
I came in teaching world history for 3 freshman classes and 2 U.S. history.
Yeah.
And then I went on to reverse that, teach 3 U.S. histories and 2 world histories. And then gradually, because of my English minor, they started putting me in some English classes, which I really enjoyed, and continued to teach U.S. history for quite a while. And then I began teaching American government probably around 1970, and that lasted until the 90s. And then I transitioned to more world history again, and government, and then some film study as well. So for a while I was teaching film studies.
They had film study at Sarah?
They did.
Was that sort of an elective thing, or was that required?
It was an elective, but a lot of kids elected it, and it was a credit class, of course,
Yeah.
because you had to write and take tests and so on.
Terrific.
So I learned a lot about film in preparing for the film class. And
so those things pretty much took up all your activities. Did you do anything else? I mean, were there any coaching days or drama or music classes?
I started working with drama productions in 1963 with the graduating class. We did Stay Like 17.
I remember that play.
And
I remember
Jim
that play.
Monahan and I were the 2 directors.
Yeah.
And then went on and did some directing on my own, and that was mainly in the 70s. And just before that, I had been the moderator of the school newspaper for a couple of years. And then in the 80s, when Dick Phelan decided to take a break from coaching tennis, he said, I've got to finish my master's degree at San Jose State. Could you pick up the tennis? So I went and did a crash course in tennis at Stanford during the summer, came back and coached the Sarah tennis team for a year or maybe 2. And they were not terribly successful, and I think they did better with coaching after that.
That's a great story. Great. When you were there, we had a lot of great athletes and all that stuff. We know that. But who are some other notable students that you might remember at Serra besides athletes? I mean, do you remember Bill Keller at all?
Oh, I do.
John Lesquois?
Yes, yeah. I think he was in one of my English classes, as
Yeah.
well as John Lesquois,
Yeah.
who wrote at least 19 novels.
And for our listeners out there, who's Bill Keller? Well, he went on to become the editor-in-chief of the New York Times.
That's right.
For quite a while, I think.
He was, yeah. And another one was Pete Barsacchini, who started as a writer with our newspaper in 1969, I think.
Yeah.
70. And then he went on and wrote a couple of novels, went down and produced some shows, some well-known shows in Los Angeles where I think he stayed.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of wonderful kids that went on to do very good academic
Do you
things.
remember Robert Degoni?
I do.
Did you have him
Yeah.
in any classes?
I think I did, and
Yeah.
I think I was just given a novel that he had written. I haven't read it yet.
Right.
Yeah, I think
He's
just about a
written
year
quite
ago.
a few. Yeah. How about the great photographer Michael Colopy? Was he in any of your
Yes,
classes?
he was. Yeah, and I knew some friends in Burlingame that were friends of his family,
Yeah.
and so I would see him once in a while.
Yeah, Michael's gone on to do some great work.
Yeah.
And then there was another one I have noted here is Greg Gutfeld. He's on the Fox News channel. Not that I watch a lot of Fox, but he has a comedy show, I guess, and he's also part of what they call the Five, and they give their political feelings about everything. Did you ever have Greg Gutfeld at all? Does that name
I
ring a bell?
remember the name very
Yeah.
much, but I don't remember him specifically.
Okay. What were some of the challenges of teaching at an all-boys Catholic high school?
Well, for one thing, the kids challenge you, even if they're freshmen. But when you get from the sophomores through the seniors, if you're new to them and they're new to you, someone or some few will challenge you. And how you respond to that, of course, is going to make a difference that whole year.
Yeah. I saw how you responded.
Sometimes
It made a difference.
Sometimes I over-responded.
It made a difference, yeah. Well, I think I saw it happen in every class. If you did something that you shouldn't be doing, you were maybe warned once or twice, and something else had to happen, right?
Yes.
You know what? That's just the way it was back then. We know it's different today. So, would you ever like to see Serra go co-ed?
I wouldn't mind. SI in San Francisco went co-ed, and that was been very successful.
Yeah.
But it might hurt the girls' schools, which are very good, Mercy
Yeah.
and Notre Dame. And it suits Serra to be an all-male school. It's been doing very well for its whole career.
I think so.
So I wouldn't recommend it necessarily.
Right. Okay. Last question, Michael, if you don't mind. What advice do you have for new teachers coming aboard?
Well, don't just wing it on your own. Check with your fellow experienced colleagues. Do whatever you need to do to prepare for that classroom management situation that you hadn't anticipated. Get some experienced advice on, keeping a grade book, varying your assignments, and try and relax as much as you can in a classroom full of teenagers.
Yeah. Mr. McGinley, Mike McGinley, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet. Good afternoon, sir. What is your name?
Mike Peterson.
Mike Peterson. That name rings a bell. Let's see. What years were you at Serra?
I came in 1978, and I was there till 2009.
You didn't teach at Serra, though, did you?
I actually taught when I was the principal there. I taught Latin 1 and 2.
Wait a minute. They made the principal teach Latin?
No, there was that we needed somebody to teach Latin, and I figured with my background in Latin, I could teach it. I had 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 8 years of teaching it. I could teach it.
And you felt pretty comfortable doing Latin. That's crazy.
I did.
That's
I
pretty
did.
good.
Yeah, it was fun.
What other activities did you participate in besides teaching Latin? What happened?
At Serra?
Yeah.
I was moderator of the Fathers Club. I was at virtually every event that happened at Serra, especially the parent organizations. And I tried to get to the kids' events, also games, whether it's a freshman game or a varsity game. I try to get to at least in the theater events, that type of stuff, even though it's the same ending every time. I tried to get there 2 nights out of the 5 nights that they participated. I'd go to the art shows. If we had projects around the school, I tried to physically be present because I think presence is a big part of everything. So, yeah, I had a great time.
So, Michael, from what I understand, all the years at Serra, there was priests were the principals, correct? you became the first lay principal. Is that right?
That's correct. I was chosen to be the first lay principal of any archdiocesan school back in 1978.
That's a breakthrough. How did that happen?
Right place, right time.
Really?
Preparation. You know, I got my degrees at that time. I'd been in Catholic education all my life. Father Shipper was becoming the superintendent of schools, and they opened it up, and I applied, and I got the job.
That was terrific.
Yeah, it was an honor for me.
And how many years principal?
I was principal there full-time for 25 straight years, and then my last 6 years I moved entirely into development, raising money, which I had been doing throughout the first 25 years, but I also was principal at that time.
Since then, it's been mostly lay people, right? Laymen being the principal there at Serra. There hasn't been any other priests, have there?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, yes.
So you laid a great foundation.
Yeah. It was fun.
I bet. Did you have to get involved in fundraising at all as a principal? Did you ever have to go out and pound the streets?
All the time. All the time. And the worst I can say is no.
That's hard to do, huh? That's really hard to do.
In the beginning, I'll be honest with you, two things. One, you realize the worst I can say is no.
Right.
The other is if you believe in the mission of what you're talking about and believe in the institution and the kids and the programs and the faculty and staff, it's easy to ask.
Yeah. Did you ever have to join, did you join Rotary clubs or Lions clubs or any service clubs like to get involved? Or?
No. I had been approached by a number of our Serra High School fathers to become Rotary clubs, especially in San Mateo. But to be honest with you, I wanted to, but to try to be away every week for 2 hours at a certain particular time.
It's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, I agree.
It just is.
It's hard to do. All right, here's an easy one, okay? What are some fond memories of Serra that you have?
I could go on forever
I know
with
you
stuff
could,
like
but
that.
keep it short, you know.
No, in a generic way, I mean, we had a great staff. I enjoyed being around the faculty, the staff, whether it was during the school day or after the school day. And I would just walk around, and see what's going on in the classrooms. And after school, other things were going on. There's education in two ways. One, what's going on in the classroom, and the other thing is what's going on after school, okay? Yeah. And they're both educational opportunities for young people, and I enjoyed watching there.
How about some notable students that you had while you were there? And please, no athletes. We all know about the athletes. But can you recall some of the guys that went on to do some good work?
Well, people that were not there when I was there, you had Bill Keller, who was the editor of the New York Times.
My class. Thank you. My class.
Very good class.
Yes.
Okay, obviously. Okay. People I've come to know, you got Michael Colopy, I believe, who's local.
Absolutely.
Great guy. I've come to know him quite a bit afterward and stuff. My own son went there.
Oh,
okay,
terrific.
Graduated in 93.
So he was there while you were there?
He was there.
Yep.
Different ambiance when your son is there, and also for him.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
We can tell you some stories about him, but we won't go there.
Robert Degoni?
Bobby's a great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy. Graduated in 1979, I think it was.
Yeah.
And quick story. You want a quick story about Bobby?
Sure, I do.
So he was editor of the school paper, The Friar, and his English teacher was the moderator of the paper. And we were having some difficulties with negotiations with the teachers back in those times, and sometimes faculty members could kind of use a vehicle like a paper to kind of influence things, okay? And there were a few things put out in the papers that I wasn't too happy about, okay? I'm trying to create community for the school.
Right.
So I would call Bob down into the office sometimes and say, Bob, let's talk about what this paper's all about, what it's all about, and what are we saying here, okay? And to that end, and it didn't hurt anybody, okay? But it was just, on a personal note, you're trying to develop community, it kind of made things a little more difficult. Well, years later, okay, I got to know Bobby because he went to Skyline College instead of Stanford. He got accepted, but he couldn't go there. And then he got reaccepted, I think in junior year, he went to Stanford and finished up that. I don't know if he was the editor of the Stanford Cardinal or not, the school paper. I just forgot, okay?
Yeah.
But he and I have maintained a kind of not a close relationship, but a mutual relationship over the years, especially with technology the way it is right now. I've had him talk about a few of his books when he comes to down in San Mateo at our Rotary Club. And we laugh about the situation that he would come into my office and would talk about what's being published in the Friar. But this is like 30 or 40 years later.
But you could see the career path, I guess, in a sense. Huh?
Great writer. I think he's a lawyer and a writer right now, primarily a writer, if I'm not mistaken.
Lives up in Washington?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep. Good
for
man.
him. One more name that I want you.
Sure.
Do you remember Greg Gutfeld at all? Does that?
I watched him last night on TV. Yeah, the 5, Greg Gutfeld. Once a Padre, always a Padre, right?
Okay, that's great. All right. Just a couple of more questions, Michael. It's funny. Would you ever like to see Sarah go co-ed?
No, okay. My daughter, who graduated in '92 from Notre Dame High School, when she was a sophomore at Notre Dame, we would come home for supper all the time and have supper together. And then I'd go back to school for Father's Club or games or whatever the case is. And she was always on my case for like 3 years. Dad, you got to get Sarah to go co-ed.
Yeah.
And I'm going, Kristen, not going to happen.
All right, last question. The principal's going to speak here. What advice do you have for new teachers coming aboard?
You know what? Get involved. Okay, obviously, when I hire you, when the school hires you, we assume you can teach. Okay, you've been vetted out. You got your degrees. We assume you know your subject area because you say you do. We vetted you out. Talk to people about you. But you know what? There's more to a school than teaching 5 periods a day.
Yeah.
Do the best you can in the classroom. Get involved. Get to know these young men outside the classroom because that's sometimes where you can really understand these young men.
Great advice, Michael. Thank you. Thanks for being
Welcome.
here. Thank
Okay,
you.
glad to do it, Mark.
Hi, what's your name?
Mike Germano.
Mike Germano. Mike, when did you teach at Sarah? What years?
Well, I was there from 1999 to 2016, but I wasn't a teacher at Sarah.
Ah, what did you do at Sarah?
I supported technology for the staff and faculty.
So it was a full-time position doing all of that, is what you're saying.
Correct. It was the first time they had a full-time position for technology at the school.
And you kept all the computers running up and running, or if things crashed, or you were the go-to guy? Is that what that was about?
All of the above, yeah. I was the single source for all their technology needs. And at that time, 1999, they had computers in the school, they had servers in the school, but they had no one maintaining them. They had a teacher that part-time would do that, but his full-time job was a teacher. So they were kind of lacking in technology standards.
Okay, so what made you so special that they hired you to do this at Sarah? What you must have been doing? Were you working for Apple or something prior to that, or what?
Well, I was working for Oracle, and I was originally a software integration automation engineer, and then became a manager of that department. And that department did standardizations for the entire company, U.S. And when I went to Sarah, which was like a real nice breath of fresh air, the hiring people there at the time, Mike Peterson, Father Howell, Lorraine Paul, Nick Carboni, they were the interview team. And it was just like being in a family. It was
really.
It was such a good feeling that I had to go there.
Yeah. Okay. So what year was that?
1999.
And up to 2017, you were there. Is that what it was?
Yeah, 6 to 8.
So were you and this is no discredit to Oracle, but were you getting fed up with the corporate world or something? Is that what it was? Why would you leave like that?
Well, it was quite a bit different. I mean, there were long days, often weekends. When we had projects, it would go sometimes, several weeks straight through the weekends. And I had a friend that I had previously worked with at Sprint, Carl Dos Remedios, who was at Sarah at the time. And he said, "Hey, you might like to be here. You'd love it here." As a matter of fact, he said, "If you come here, you'll retire from here."
Really?
So I went over and...
we have a phone ringing here. That's his wife calling in to see what's up.
So they're still calling me for help at the school now.
Great, man. That's great.
No.
Yeah.
So, I went over. He goes, "Well, just do an informational thing. Just come over and meet the people here."
Yeah.
And I did that, and it's like, wow, it's like a family here. It really had that feeling, which was very different than the corporate world.
So as the IT guy at Sarah, were you responsible then for updating the equipment or whatever? I don't know much about tech, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard enough time just making these microphones work, but were you responsible for upgrading computers and networking and whatever they had to do?
Yeah, so
all that
all the
stuff.
above, and
Yeah.
also the phone systems and the audio-visual tech systems.
Yeah, and there was enough to keep you busy 40 hours a week.
Well, there was enough to keep me busy, way more than 40 hours a week.
Really?
Initially, yeah, the first 6 months trying to get everything standardized. Everything was, there was not really standardization in the school, which made it very difficult to support.
I bet.
Almost every problem was unique. So the first 6 months I was there were long days, and I ended up standardizing all the equipment, all the software on everything.
Yeah. You're a fairly young guy. Why did you leave in 2017? Why didn't you keep working?
Well, it was kind of our family tradition. When we, all my family, when they hit the age of 60, kind of retired. And I thought, I'm going to keep that family tradition.
60. You went out at 60? Mm-hmm. Okay. It can be done, folks.
It can be done.
I waited till 72, man. Good for you. Do you miss it?
Well, I immediately missed the people there.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'll say the same thing.
Yeah.
Working with so many of the faculty and the staff were just such a pleasure to be around all the time. It becomes your family.
Yeah, and that's what some of the fond memories you have of Serra, then, I guess, is the family feeling. And
yeah.
Did you ever have much workings with the students, or was it more with the teachers at the school?
It was always the faculty and staff.
Yeah.
And we had, I can't even remember the numbers now.
Yeah.
Probably about 140 computers there, and then we ended up with all the portable devices too. So that multiplied that way up. But I had not a lot of interaction with the students. There were several students that volunteered after school to help with projects because everything was in multiples of big.
Right. Were you using Apple computers back then? What were the computers at the schools back then?
So there were always Windows. There were Windows when I got there, and we standardized on that. And the big step that came up was when portable devices started to become the norm. When I started there, wireless was not around anywhere.
Right. And when you say that would be the iPads coming in, or what?
Yeah, and actually that was a good point. When it became time that it's like, well, students could take advantage of having a portable device, whether it's a tablet or a laptop or, God forbid, a phone, having a portable device in the classroom with teacher direction. When it came time for that, it was going around in the schools, there was a lot of big decisions to be made. Some schools were saying, we're going to buy iPads and give them to all the students. Other schools were saying, we're going to require the parents to buy this model of this. Uh-huh. And I felt, and it was accepted by the administration, that at this time, all the students mostly had a portable device at home, whether it was a tablet or a laptop or an Apple or a Windows. Uh-huh. They already had that. So to have them go out and buy something else didn't seem necessary. Okay. So we just set up standards that as long as their device could connect to the internet and it could, had a battery life that they could get through the day, so they weren't running out halfway through the day. If it met some standards we had specified, they could bring their own device to school, and it worked out real well.
What if they had an issue with their device? It was crashing or, I don't know, on overload. Were you able to, would you fix it for them, or do they have to go down to Mac and Burlingame or something like that?
A little of both. Uh-huh. So we had kind of a center where I worked from, along with Michael Rockwell and Rob Morris. We had ended up with, later on, 2 full-time people and 1 part-time. And often they would be able to bring their device they were having difficulty with to us, and we would resolve it for them. If we couldn't, it might end up being something like, you go to the Apple store for this.
Correct. All right, one last question, all right, before we wrap this up. And maybe it didn't affect you one way or the other when you were at Serra, but would you like to see the school become co-ed?
Well, I haven't given that any thought.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for tradition. There's advantages, disadvantages of both ways.
Right.
So I honestly haven't thought about that.
All right. Well, next year when we get together, have an answer, okay? Yeah. Michael, thank you for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay.
Good afternoon, my good man. And what's your name?
Joe Leach.
Joe Leach. You taught at Serra?
I sure did.
When?
1984 to 2001.
So that's about, I don't know, 17 years?
Correct.
Great. And what did you teach?
I taught theology, I taught U.S. history, I taught Spanish, and I was the director of guidance.
And the director of guidance. Okay.
Correct. School counseling.
You taught theology, though. That would, back in my day, it was called religion class.
Yeah, no,
Same thing, or a little deeper thinking? Or
A little
what?
deeper.
Okay. And what were some of the other activities you did besides teach?
Well, I moderated the speech club, and I did Junior State Association. And, of course, all of us did mini course at one point. I'm not sure the program is still active, but we would have the kids off campus for a week doing different things. I brought them up to the city, and we used public transportation to go around and see the sights in San Francisco.
Man, we never had any of that stuff in the 60s. That's great. It's really progressed like that. Terrific. Did you have one or more principals while you were there?
Just Mike Peterson.
Yeah.
Steve Howell was the president, and Nick Carboni was the assistant principal.
Yeah.
And Tom McKenzie was the other assistant principal.
How about some fond memories of Serra?
Well, my fond memories revolve around community. The faculty was very supportive of one another. We helped one another in what can at times be a challenging profession. And we were good to the kids. There was an emphasis on caring for them,
Yeah.
but also challenging them. And the thing that struck me is we always valued forming their character above and beyond what we were teaching. We had to be good with that. But the main goal was to help these boys become good young men and move forward with meaningful lives.
That's been a real common thread among all of the teachers that have sat down here at this table today, talking about that kind of camaraderie and what they wanted for the boys. It just feels good, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah. A couple of notable students that you might remember during that time?
Oh, it'd be hard-pressed to give you specific names, but I remember the kids that were speaking in my speech club. Ron Teeler, I think he lives back east now, but real nice kid, and I think he developed a lot of confidence doing some public speaking.
Yeah.
Martin Lauber, early in my career, he's a very successful entrepreneur in the Bay Area right now. So just a lot of fine kids who worked hard in the classroom, but also were very involved and very multi-talented.
Yeah. Would you ever like to see Serra go co-ed, Joe?
No, I wouldn't. I've taught at co-ed schools as well, and it is different. There's a place for a single-sex atmosphere, and the emphasis on brotherhood at Serra, I think, is really something that distinguishes it, and it'd be a shame to lose that.
Yeah, I agree. Finally, any advice for new teachers coming aboard?
Well, it's not a job. It's a vocation. And you need to enter into it with firmness, fairness, consistency, and care.
Wow. Well said.
It worked for me.
It sounds like it did, Joe. 17 years.
Yeah.
Good. Did you? One last question. Did you retire out of Serra, or did you continue teaching elsewhere?
I continued teaching for 14 more years at Sacred Heart Cathedral in San Francisco.
So you stayed in that Catholic atmosphere.
Yes.
Was the cathedral co-ed?
Yes.
It was. So
Yes.
that's where you got a little bit of that co-ed.
Yes.
feeling
And
as
there were
well.
some real pluses with that as well.
I bet, yeah.
But it's just different.
Yeah. And you decided to go up to the teach at Sacred Heart Cathedral because it was closer to home, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, the commute to Serra took its toll.
Yeah. How many years did you live in? How many years you been living in the city?
60 years.
That's terrific, man. Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet. Good afternoon, and what's your name?
My name is Rob Solari.
Rob Solari, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What years did you teach at Serra, Rob?
I taught from 1977 to 2017, so 40 years.
You know, it's funny. Everybody here has had a fairly long career. I think 17 has been the minimum that I've heard so far, and that's a pretty good career in itself, but 40 years is amazing. Good for you. What subject or subjects did you teach while you were at Serra?
I was primarily a biology teacher, and I taught
boy.
several. That
One of
wasn't-
those guys.
That wasn't your subject?
Not really. Okay, biology.
So primarily biology, also taught a freshman class called Discovering Science.
Okay. I don't think we had that when I was there. And
Might not have.
Might have been good. Okay, that I didn't have to take something like biology. Good for you. All class was biology one grade specific, like just sophomores or juniors or something like that?
It evolved, so it eventually became introductory biology was a sophomore course and sometimes freshman.
Yeah.
Then I also taught a course, advanced biology, which was taken by mostly seniors.
Yeah, but a lab class had to be taken, right? At least one lab class had to be taken before graduating?
Yeah, and we tried to match the UC requirements for coursework.
Wonderful.
And they required 2 years of laboratory science. So
Yeah.
most students would take biology as one and then chemistry as the additional one.
Terrific. That's a great pipeline to the Cal campuses for sure. Did you have any other activities that you were involved in while you were at Serra?
Yes.
Besides teaching?
Yeah, I coached track for 13 years, which I absolutely adored. And then I also was the bike club moderator. So we'd ride bikes, different trails and things along the peninsula. And I was also department chairman of the science department for 34 years, maybe.
Oh my gosh, you had a lot going on. Quick question about track coach.
Yes.
What year was that? Do you remember?
I coached track from 1977 until the late 80s, I suppose.
Okay. Was Joe Reno around? Do you remember that name at all? He was my track coach at Serra in the 60s, so maybe he was gone by
Yeah,
then.
he had been gone. The head coach at that time was Rick Fambrini.
Rick Fambrini. Huh. That name brings such a...
Yeah.
Was he a graduate of Serra?
He was, and he actually was quite a runner himself.
I
while
think he was
at
in
Serra.
my class of 66, to be honest with you. That name is so familiar, but, you get old and you don't remember stuff as much. Okay, so how about a couple of fond memories of Serra?
Yeah. Something I should also mention, too, I didn't mention, I took Serra students to Europe every summer for 22 years. So we would take students that wanted to expand their education
Are
and
you
experience.
kidding? Were they seniors, juniors? Would they have to be a certain age level?
Mostly juniors and seniors, and we would do basically a tour of the continent for about a month.
Terrific. And did you take parents with, chaperones or what? How'd that work? You had to have somebody with you, didn't you?
Yeah, we only teachers. We wanted people that had experience with students. So actually, Russ Bertetta went with us 1 year, and Father Howell went with us 1 year. But it was mostly myself, my wife, and another teacher and his wife.
That's got to be a fond memory of Serra right there.
Oh, yeah, it was great. You really get to know the kids well, and to see, the look on someone's faces the first time they see, the Big Ben in London or the Eiffel Tower or something like that.
But you had this all charted out. You knew exactly where you were going, and et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely, yeah, all worked out.
And I bet over the years you got better at it too. And
oh, sure, yeah, we did all the tour guiding ourselves.
Yep.
So yeah, you get pretty good at it after a while.
terrific. Anything else that you remember about Serra that's fond to you?
One thing I appreciated was sort of the freedom Serra gave me. So if I had an interest in something other than my science courses, they allowed me to pursue that and share that with the students.
Yeah, isn't that great?
It really was, yes.
Gives you some autonomy, I think the word is there. Good. What were some of the challenges of teaching at an all-boys Catholic high school?
They evolved over time. When I first got there in 1977, I was
How old were you?
24.
Yeah.
So just fresh out of graduate school.
Right.
And it was a pretty tough school. So it wasn't unusual for me to be in the middle of a fight that kids would have. Boys will be boys.
That's
and
right.
Back then, I got in fights when I was in high school, I'm sorry to say. And, and my students did also. So that was not an uncommon thing. But as time evolved, no more fighting. Kids just didn't get in fights anymore, which was obviously wonderful. And it had to do maybe with, a kinder, gentler sort of approach.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
What do you feel about Serra going co-ed? Not that it's going to go co-ed, but how would that make you feel if it?
Yeah, my biology course, my senior biology course, was in fact co-ed. We had a sister program with Mercy and Notre Dame where the girls could choose certain Serra courses and come to Serra to take those courses. So for a number of years, my senior biology class was about half boys and half girls. And it went really well.
Is it still going on?
No. Well, that course isn't going on. I couldn't speak to what's going on now with other courses. But Oh, the point is that worked out okay, but there is something to be said for a single-sex education. So boys tend to be stifled a little bit in their reaction and willingness to share in class when girls are present. So all my classes, kids that probably wouldn't have shared because of being shy or not sure of what they knew or should have known, were willing to share because it was a very collegial and friendly environment.
And they felt comfortable around other male students.
Absolutely,
I guess, right?
yeah. So I think it played well for the majority of students I had.
Good answer. I like that.
It took me a while to get it out,
That's
but I got
okay.
it.
Yeah. What advice would you have for new teachers coming aboard?
Well, I think you got to realize that teaching is not an easy job. You have to love it because certainly the benefits aren't monetary, but having the opportunity to affect someone's life, hopefully in a very positive way, is pay enough in itself.
Yeah. Did you retire outright after leaving Serra, or did you continue anywhere else?
I retired outright. I made a promise to myself, several promises to myself when I started teaching, and one of the big ones was if I couldn't give it 100% and full horsepower, it was time to stop.
Time to move on?
Yeah, and I just realized that I was just running out of steam.
Yeah.
So it's time to shut the engine down.
You made a good decision then. Yeah, good for you, Rob. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You bet. And what is your name, sir?
My name is Bruce Anthony.
Bruce Anthony. What years did you teach at Serra High School?
Let's see, Mark. Started in the fall of 1977 and retired when I turned 70. So if I do the math right, that was in 2016. No, 2018. I did the math wrong. 2018.
Okay.
41 years.
41. That everybody in this show today, has been, the minimum's been 17 all the way up to Randy Vogel with 50.
Right.
Amazing how many guys who have been 30 and 40 years. Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Wait a minute, you said you retired at 70?
Yeah.
So wait a minute, that was back when?
That was in 2018.
So what does that mean? You're 75 now or 70? No.
Yesterday I turned 76.
Congratulations. I'll be there in November. Yeah, and I retired. I was 72 when I retired.
Okay.
50 years in supermarketing, but we have a lot of parallels here. I like it, Bruce. Yeah. Good. What did you teach at Serra?
Oh, gee, when I started, I was teaching kind of the business-oriented classes. You may have remembered Ken Hool.
Ken was my accounting teacher.
I taught
or bookkeeping, I
class.
think we called it at that.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So it was bookkeeping, and then when I got there, we called it accounting.
Yeah.
And so Ken was kind of my mentor. I taught accounting and a course called business finance, which kind of evolved into economics. And then over the years, I taught regular math curriculum, algebra.
Another
1,
math
algebra
guy.
2.
I got 2 math guys and a biology guy here today.
Right.
Oh, man.
Right.
Okay.
Did our first computer programming class, and so a variety of
Really?
subjects. And then evolved into being admissions director along with Randy Vogel.
Yeah.
And
man, you saw a lot in 41 years then.
I think so.
Did you do anything other than, that administrative work and teaching? Were you involved in any sort of drama or the yearbook or the friar or coaching or any of that kind of stuff?
I did a lot of coaching on the side in city sports, but at Serra, the extent of my coaching really was the bowling club. I was the moderator of the bowling club.
Where would you guys bowl? Oh, at the Elks?
You're one of the few people that knows there's a bowling lane at the Elks.
I think there's 3. Is there 3?
I think so.
Yeah.
But, we were a little larger than that. We started out at 19th Avenue Bowl.
Oh, yeah, right.
Which closed down about 20.
Then it went to the appliance place, and now I think it's
right
totally gone, right?
Right.
It's probably
so
high
then we
rises.
moved over to Bel Mateo, which was a little bit further away. But
which is behind Molly Stone's. I had to give Molly Stone's a little plug.
I understand you've got a connection with Molly Stone's.
In Burlingame, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Is it still there?
The one in Burlingame, you better believe it's still there.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So I had the bowling club for, probably 35 of my 41 years.
How fun. Were you a bowler?
I was a bowler.
Yeah.
Yeah. And growing up in San Carlos and then in college also.
Yeah.
So I had some good bowlers over the years.
Oh, I bet,
Come through Serra.
I bet.
But nobody knew about it because, of course, it wasn't a interscholastic sport.
Right. It wasn't WCAL and all this stuff, right?
But we actually had a couple of our bowlers that earned college scholarships because of their bowling.
College scholarship for bowling.
Right.
That is a kick, man. That's great. Who were in 41 years? You had a variety of principals. Can you name a few for me?
Well, the very first principal was Father Carl Schipper. He was just there that my first year. And then Mike Peterson, who you met earlier.
Yep.
Was my next principal.
He
was there.
He was the first lay teacher.
He was.
Yeah, to break through.
In fact, I kind of think of myself as coming into Serra at the kind of tail end of the golden age.
Yeah.
With the faculty. You had, for a long time, mostly priests, and then gradually the lay teachers came in.
Yeah.
Jess Freitas was, I think, the second lay teacher to be hired at Serra. And my first year, Jess and I shared a classroom.
Jess taught math, didn't he?
He taught math, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, coached the football team.
Of course, yeah. Sons and all that, right?
And I remember Jess and I, besides sharing a classroom, we also did cafeteria supervision. And
that had to be interesting.
It was. But what was really interesting, I remember vividly, is the kids would scarf down their food and want to go out to the blacktop and play hoops or throw the football around or just goof off. And there was this one kid that would kind of stay behind. And at first I was thinking, well, he must not be into athletics much. He's sticking around and just talking with Jess and me.
Right.
And it turns out the kid's name was Tommy Brady.
Interesting. Number 12.
And the reason he stuck around instead of going out on the blacktop is he would just pick Jess's brain, wanting to find out everything that Jess knew about playing quarterback.
Yeah, isn't that great? And it all paid off.
It sure did.
Okay, so you moved into notable students, and I know we have lots of great athletes, of course. How about some non-athletes that went on to do well? Tell me about some of. Do you remember anybody?
I remember lots. Yeah.
Give me a couple of names.
Well, names that you won't know. Actually, let me just kind of be the proud papa for a moment. I had.
Of course.
Two of my boys went to Serra.
Yep.
So
great.
My oldest son, Trevor, he became editor of the school paper.
Yep.
Did well with that.
Cool.
And he considered himself an athlete when he got to Serra.
Yep.
Quickly realized that after being cut from 3 sports that he was not going to make it in athletics.
Yeah.
And so he ended up getting involved in journalism with the school paper and on stage performing musicals and theater productions.
I think it's wonderful. And so many times you don't hear about those things that Serra does. It's always about the sports.
Right.
And I thought it'd be fun to remember some other people. Did you? Well, let me give you a couple of names then, if that's okay with you. I know Keller and Lesquin were not there because they were in my class in '66. Bill Keller went on to be the editor of the New York, editor-in-chief of the Times. And Lesquin had many best-selling books. How about Michael Colopy?
My wife reads all of Lesquin's books.
They're terrific. Yeah. How about Michael Colopy, the great photographer?
I met him several times, but he was also before my time.
He was, okay.
Yeah.
What was your time again?
1977.
All right,
through 2018.
What about Robert Degoni? Was he around? Or
he was.
Yeah. He's gone on to do very well.
Absolutely, as a writer. Yeah. And his brothers, too.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know much about his brothers. But
Sean Degoni is still on the faculty at Serra.
Really?
He's one of his younger brothers.
Terrific. Nice to hear. And they have a big
coaches
family.
Basketball.
I think they had a big family that came out of OLA, Our Lady Evangelist.
Yes.
And what about Greg Gutfeld? Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah. In fact, Greg Gutfeld was at St. Gregory's. The one year I was there.
No kidding.
Greg was there probably K through 8. But I never taught him at St. Greg's.
Yeah.
But
did you teach him at Serra?
I never taught him at Serra either.
Okay, yeah.
No.
All right. Some challenges of teaching at an all-boys Catholic high school.
Oh, challenges. Well, first challenge is the fact that I was a product of public schools. So I went through public schools here in San Carlos, and then through San Carlos High School, and on to UC Berkeley. And
Go Bears.
Absolutely. Still waiting to go to the Rose Bowl, but that's a pipe dream now that there is no such Pac-12.
It's about over with now.
In fact, I vowed never to set foot into the Rose Bowl until they earned a New Year's invitation.
I bet, yeah.
And I broke my vow, actually, last football season. I went to the final Pac-12 game in history between Cal and UCLA.
Hard to say. Isn't that hard to say, the final Pac-12 game? Like, what happened, right? Yeah. We're getting off the course here,
I know,
Bruce.
I know.
All right.
Back on course.
Challenges of teaching at a
So that's what we're getting
school.
to. The fact that being the product of a public school education And then coming to Serra High School, I was kind of a fish out of water. It was, being in a Catholic school, not growing up Catholic, being in an all-boys school when I'd always been in a co-ed environment. So,
Were you expected to attend Mass?
well, school masses.
Right.
Yes, as far as every day or every week Sunday masses, no.
I get that part, but if we had Mass a lot on Fridays, I think, when I was there. And, of course, the auditorium was filled. That's where we had it. But I didn't know if you were a non-Catholic, if you could take like a long coffee break or something, or did you have to attend Mass?
No, we were there expected to supervise.
Yeah.
Yeah, during the masses.
Right.
And over the years, Father Howell kind of would, have conversations with me.
Right. And
about
what,
the fact that
of converting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I married a cute Italian Catholic girl
That's always good.
in 1976.
Yep. Good.
And then our first son was born in 1979. So about that time, I think Father Howell kind of suggested that taking an RCIA class would be a good idea.
To become a convert?
Right.
Did you become a convert?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. But not until my youngest kids, twins, were born in 1989.
All right.
So at that point, we figured Father Howell would say, "You're going to church every Sunday, right?" And I said, "Yeah, well, with the wife and the kids." And he said, "You're a better Catholic than most Catholics I know. So have you thought about taking the next step?"
Yeah.
So
Good.
that
So you
finally
did.
happened. Yeah.
All right. Good for you. Good for you, Bruce. All right. What do you think about Serra becoming co-ed? I haven't heard that it's going to be becoming co-ed. I just would like to know if you feel it should be co-ed.
I think many years ago, I thought it might be a good idea when our enrollment was starting to decline.
Uh-huh.
And our sister schools over at Notre Dame, Belmont, and Mercy and Burlingame, their enrollments were declining, and I figured that might be the only way to actually survive. And so many of the other schools, SI and St. Francis, were going co-ed.
Yeah.
But I think we weathered that storm, and I think it provides a unique experience for the families. There are things that you can do in an all-boys environment that I don't think you can get away with, especially now.
I believe in the tradition.
Co-ed environment.
I wasn't a great student, but I believe in the tradition.
Yeah, so my accounting classes, they were actually co-ed.
Yeah.
With girls from Mercy and Notre Dame.
Is that still today? Do they still do that today? Do you know?
There are, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure which classes are, but I think it's even more so that they have what are called tri-school classes.
Yeah.
I had one summer, to mention another name, Barry Bonds. I had Barry in my my transitional class between 8th grade and 9th grade. And about 4 years ago, my youngest son is teaching at Cathedral Catholic High School in San Diego. And he's telling me the story about an interview he was doing with a incoming freshman family. And the mother heard that she was going to be interviewing with Mr. Anthony. And then when he came out to meet the family and the incoming freshman daughter, she looked at him and said, "Oh, you're not the Mr. Anthony I know." And she said, "What Mr. Anthony do you know?" And she said, "Mr. Anthony that taught at Serra High School in San Mateo." And he said, "That's my father."
And
she says,
crazy, man. Wow.
"Your father's responsible for my meeting the man that became one of my best friends, became the godfather of our daughter, and introduced me to my husband." Turns out the gal's name was Denise Coleman. Her husband was Vince Coleman, baseball player.
Yeah, Vince Coleman, right.
And she was introduced to Vince Coleman by Barry Bonds, who she met in my summer school class back in 1970, whatever.
Yeah, the world just got smaller again, didn't it?
It sure does.
That's a great story. And just so coincidental, too, huh? So random, I guess what you would say. All right, what advice do you have for new teachers coming into the profession?
Oh, specifically at Serra or just in the teaching profession?
I would say let's go specifically at Serra because it's a little different being it's an all-boys school. Maybe you're a female now. They got females teaching, right? So, but let's just play Serra. Yeah.
Okay. Advice. Be prepared to work harder than you've ever worked. Be prepared for long hours. Get there early in the morning, leave late, sometimes into the evening.
Yeah.
Don't take off weekends because you've got to get caught up on all the work that you have to do then. Realize you're not going to be rewarded financially, but if you do it right, it's going to be the most satisfying lifetime you'll ever experience.
Yeah. And I think it shows today the bond that all of you teachers and administrators have among you today. It's pretty cool to see. I'm really glad Russ invited me to come over.
Well, we're happy you did come.
Yeah. Bruce, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You bet. My next guest needs no introduction because he was on my show last year, and he's just 3 views, or I should say 3 listens away from the magic 400. Russ Bertetta, our host today. So thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for being here. I hope you had a good time.
Oh, come on, man. The thing is, I didn't know anybody, which was kind of cool. I knew 2 teachers from the 60s, but all of these guys, and some of these guys have been teaching at Serra for 40 years.
Yeah, and longer in a couple of cases.
As a mind blower.
Yeah,
a mind blower. So how did this whole, you call it Traditions Luncheon? Is that what it's called?
We started to call it the Wrestler's Lunch, Retired Serra Teachers Lunch. Okay? And then Jim Monahan, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, he came up with the name of Tradition Makers.
Yeah.
In the fact that, all of us had been part of creating different types of traditions at Serra. And so we thought that was
I think that's a good fit.
Yeah, I think it is too. And everybody jumped on it right away saying, this gives us a little bit more of a credibility than just retired teachers.
And how long's it been going on?
That's a good question because, of course, we took at least a year off during the pandemic. But I think probably maybe 15 years, close to that. We started out, a bunch of us were at a funeral of a mom who we were all close to. And it was at St. Pius. And I think I said to Jim Monahan and Nick Carboni, we need to get together. We spent a lot of time working together. And now we just see each other at funerals, and we need to make something happen because we liked each other's company. And so we started doing it at I think Westlake Joe's, and then one time we went up into the Vacaville area, so our brothers up there in the Sacramento area didn't have so far to travel. And then we did a couple other restaurants, and it was the cost was a little bit more than all of us retired guys can afford now.
I get that, yeah.
And then secondly, you go to something like that, and basically you don't have a lot of time to mingle. You sit at a long table.
And it's hard to mingle with the guy at the end of the table. Here was so much easier in your backyard. It was terrific.
Yeah, and so I just said, I'm going to host it here, and we'll cut costs. It'll make it a lot more friendly, and people don't have to be in a hurry to leave. They could hang around, or so that's when we started to do that. So it's probably been maybe 10 years here, except for the pandemic year.
Really?
Yeah.
And you mentioned at the beginning when we were all meeting outside that somebody helped with the catering or something.
Yeah, we have an alum from the class of '87 who he and I were having dinner together. We're pretty good friends, and he said, I'd like to help put this on because all you guys meant a lot to me when I.
But he wasn't here. He didn't come.
No, he lives in Texas.
Oh.
And he works at the University of San Francisco. And I'm just going to keep his name anonymous.
And that's fine.
But
what do you mean? He works with USF, but he lives in Texas?
Yeah, he's in the Labor Relations Department at USF.
Wow, okay.
And so his wife was in the Air Force. She was an Air Force doctor, and so their last post was there, and they raised their kids. And so he comes out to USF once or twice a month, and then he works remotely the other time. So we were at dinner, and he said, hey, I'd like to underwrite this. All you guys meant a lot to me when I was a kid, and I just want to say thank you.
Isn't that gracious?
Yeah, it's really nice.
That's
it's really nice.
And then you mentioned that the guys that cater it, were they Serra guys or something?
This year's was Dan Maloof. He was from the class of '01, and he has an outfit called Curveball Sliders. And so our lunch today was different sliders with salads.
By the way, they were wonderful.
Yeah, they really were.
Curveball sliders, is that the name of it?
Yeah. And they're located out of Pacifica or South City, I think.
Yeah.
And then last year we had Val Tonti, who does a lot of things up and down the peninsula. And I can't remember the name of it right now, but he was an alum, and he brought his truck, and everybody lined up out in front of his truck.
So he had a truck outside.
Yeah,
How
he had
cool.
a truck outside. Yeah, the only thing with that was it was just the guy that got served first and me who was last, there was like about a half an hour difference because he was making up all the sandwiches right on the spot.
Yeah.
So we decided that this one was a little bit better, and I'm going to reach out to other grads who have catering businesses to do the next one.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's us way of reaching out to the kids that we taught. We like to see them, and way of saying, hey, we're here to support you.
Yeah, good way to support everybody, Russ. That's
Yeah.
a lot of fun. So, did you normally have this on the same weekend every year so everybody knows that, or is this it just jumps around?
It just jumps around. In
Yeah.
fact, this year we had to change the date 3 times because number one, there was my first date. I think I sent out too many guys couldn't make it, and then the last 2 is I've been doing some traveling and I was gone and I had to fill a schedule at the Giants and I was just like, I can't do this until I get at least a full week off. So.
Yeah. How many invites do you typically send out?
No, probably 28 or so, I guess. Yeah.
And you get there was a pretty good showing today.
There was a few people that were late. There were late no-shows. I got a call this morning saying guy wasn't feeling good, he couldn't make it.
Yeah.
And there was a couple other guys whose absence surprised me. So it just happens.
But all of these fellas that were here today, and the ladies too, you taught with them one time or another?
Yeah, most of them for 30 years. Bruce,
and of course Carboni. Well, he was there so long, but he came on my senior year,
right?
And obviously you were a junior then, so there was no teaching then. But he was there so long that you eventually, I guess, taught while he was there.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah, definitely. He was the academic vice principal, and he was the guy that made of all our schedules. So we always make sure that we didn't mess with Nick because we didn't want that 7-period study hall.
That's funny, man. Well, I really appreciate being here today. We've done really well. We've got over an hour and 20 minutes into it, and I got 10 guys. 10, I think 2 or 3 of the ladies and 7 or 8
No,
guys.
I think it was really cool. We talked about this, and I was a little bit nervous if people were going to say, "Oh, I don't want to do that," But everybody, is proud of what we did,
and it showed.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I can't wait to hear what
you could feel the camaraderie among these teachers, administrators, male or female. Just the good feeling they have.
Yeah, I think that there always is. Everybody's,
Sarah.
Since we do it once a year, everybody's really glad to see each other and catch up a little bit. Not too much time spent talking about your health and so forth. It's good things, and it's just fun to see each other. Like Mike McGinley. He and I always used to talk politics and history and got some of that done.
Well, they were all well-spoken,
Yeah.
but Mike is really well-spoken.
He really is,
And it was just a real honor to see him because I used to know him as Mr. McGinley.
Yeah.
And to say Mike McGinley was kind of fun to say.
But he was probably Magoon in your day.
I don't know. Like I told the story when he dumped Cressy's desk. I didn't want to mess with him. I just wanted to behave myself.
Yeah. But we all had nicknames that the kids called us behind our backs, or
of course.
And so but those are I've always been proud about the people that I worked with, and I consider them all good friends in varying degrees, and I think people can feel it from the outside.
Oh, it shows, and you could just a warm feeling here today. I'm sorry I didn't get to say goodbye to everybody, but they were coming in here one at a time. And anyway, thank you so much, Russ.
Thanks for doing this.
And I'll send you the link when it's all done, and you can post it. And,
for sure.
And we'll share it. Maybe you'll get 3 extra hits, pal.
Maybe I will. I'm going to reach out to my fans out there. I said I need that 400 listeners. I want to make it in the Lucchese Golden Circle Award here.
You're getting big, Russ. You're getting big. Thank you very much for today.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right, Russ.
Bye-bye.
I'd like to thank Russ Bertetta for hosting the Serra Traditions Luncheon and the following teachers who were on the podcast: Tom Monahan, Randy Bogle, Nick Carboni, Peggy Farrell, Linda Clark, Mike McGinley, Mike Peterson, Mike Germano, Joe Leach, Rob Solari, Bruce Armstrong, and again, Russ Bertetta. Thanks, everyone. Great job. See you next year.